This story is called The Saint and the Mountain Spirit, and it took place many centuries ago in Greece. Through the rugged mountains of the Peloponnese, many narrow paths and tracks wind from town to town, from village to village. They are often hemmed in by steep crags on one side, while on the other, the eye of the traveler peers cautiously over deep precipices or along dark ravines where noisy torrents gush over the boulders in the rainy season. Beside such a track, in the bare gray wall of rock at the top of the mountain, was a cave. It was in a lonely place, feared by travelers. Here only the cry of the eagles circling the summit of the mountain broke the stillness. In this cave there lived a hermit, a man with mild eyes and gray hair. He spent his life praying for his fellow human beings and asking God's grace for them. His prayers always ended with the words, "Lord, they know not what they do." The track in front of the hermit's cave ran beside a deep, dark chasm and was particularly dangerous, for it often happened that a strong wind came gusting down from the mountain top, and woe betide the traveler who at that moment was passing along the track. These gusts were so violent and unexpected that poor wayfarers would be swept off their feet and hurled into the ravine. Occasionally the unfortunate victims might be able to cling to a projecting bush and cry desperately for help. But who would hear them in that wilderness and come to their aid? Well, there was someone, and that was the hermit who lived in the cave. He knew the mountain and its ways. The great silence had so sharpened his ears that he could hear the high, flute-like noise made by the wind before the gust struck. It sounded as if some mighty being were taking a huge indrawn breath to fill its gigantic lungs to bursting point. Then the old hermit would go to the entrance of his cave, and he would listen. And if he heard a human cry, he would run with a rope in his hand. In this way, he had saved the lives of many, many people. Near his cave, the hermit had built a little stone shrine where he placed an icon of Saint Nicholas, the holy protector of all travelers. Day and night he kept an oil lamp burning there, and this showed the weary travelers the way to the safety of the cave. For this deed of compassion, the hermit was loved and honored by the inhabitants of the villages who sometimes had to use the dangerous path. Among them it was said that a wicked spirit had his dwelling on the top of the mountain, and it was this evil spirit who cast people down into the chasm, and who else but a saint could protect one from such a danger? The hermit, however, did not think that he was doing anything extraordinary, but thanked God for every successful rescue, for he so loved humankind. One lovely spring evening, when all the flowers of Greece seemed to be holding an assembly, the holy man left his dwelling in order to thank God in the open air for all the beauty bestowed on nature. The air was full of fragrance. The mountain slopes were all golden or purple, with innumerable blossoming shrubs. The valleys resembled many-colored Persian carpets, with here and there bright patches of red, orange, and yellow. It was growing darker, and the hermit saw lanterns moving in the distant villages. It was Good Friday, and away, far away down there, the people were walking with candles in procession with the picture of the dead Christ. The cool wind carried the slow, mournful tolling of the bells. The old man stayed there until the last light had disappeared. Then he went back to his cave, but when he entered, he had a fright. It seemed to him that something was moving near the back wall of his dwelling. something that looked like an enormous boulder. The holy man crossed himself. Suddenly the ground beneath his feet shook, and in the cave was heard a heavy voice, like the growl from the depths of the earth during an earthquake. The voice said, "Do not do that, or I must go away, and I want to talk to you." "Who are you?" the hermit managed to ask with some difficulty. "I am he who rules over this mountain and casts the human ants into the abyss," was the grim answer. "I have come to ask you why and by what power you try to prevent me from doing this. Whenever you appear, I am powerless." The holy man could not believe his ears. "Are you the spirit of this mountain?" he stammered. "Yes, I am," said the voice. "I must make myself visible to you in this way, otherwise your human eyes would not see me." He went on vehemently. "I hate you human beings, you unreliable, ungrateful creatures. The great gods of Hellas turned against you, hunted you, and tried to destroy you." The hermit said to him, "Human beings are God's youngest children, and I love my fellow human beings in spite of all their weaknesses and errors. The one God, unknown to you, suffered death for love of us humans and rose again from the dead. All that I do is in his name, for his love is great." "Great?" asked the mountain spirit. "The people of my time long ago knew about love too, but the power of your God must be very great, I see that, and so I listen. If you can prove to me that his love is greater than any other power, I shall bow before him and leave people in peace." The hermit looked toward the picture of Christ above his bed and went and sat beneath it. "May God help me," he sighed. "I shall tell you about his power. Once I knew an old shepherd who lived with his daughter in a little village not far from here. One evening when he had brought back his flocks to the village houses, he noticed to his horror that one of the sheep was missing. He went back into the mountains to look for the lost animal. Hour after hour went by and he did not return. The whole village was already asleep when his young daughter, full of anxiety for him, went after him. She knew the mountains well, but still she searched in vain until she came here and found him. You know what happened then." "Yes, I blew the shepherd over the edge," growled the spirit, "but he managed to catch hold of a bush." "That was so," the hermit sighed, "and I did not hear him, for I was on the other side of the mountain. God be thanked I came back at that time, but even so I was too late. I found the girl hanging over the precipice, one hand clasping a point of rock, and with the other she was holding on to her half-conscious father. She did not have the strength to pull him up. She was already exhausted, and she slipped with him into the abyss." The hermit was silent. The mountain spirit snorted impatiently. "That's nothing new. A child's love. I have seen that before. Did you ever hear of King Oedipus and his daughter?" The hermit nodded. "You are right." The mountain spirit roared with laughter, so that the grit fell off the wall of the rock. "I'll give you another chance," he growled. "Tomorrow at this time you will see me again." And he vanished. The next evening the old man was sitting beneath the icon when the cave shook as if with an earthquake, and the spirit appeared. "Have you anything better to tell me than yesterday?" he asked mockingly. "Listen and judge for yourself," was the calm answer of the hermit. "Once war was raging in this land. It was a dreadful war. The suffering was terrible amongst the people and amongst those who were fighting. Not only danger, but also much hunger and hardship had to be borne. 2 friends were fighting in the front ranks. They were already at their limit with hunger, cold, and exhaustion, when one of them was badly wounded in an attack. But worse was to come. Their forces had to fall back before the strength of the enemy, and in the confusion, the wounded man was left behind. But he was not forgotten, whose friend, who could hardly walk himself, looked for him and found him. This friend lifted his fellow soldier on his shoulders, and, weary and alone, for he could not catch up with the others, carried him through the mountains. He came this way. As soon as he arrived at my cave, he fell down unconscious. With God's help, I was able to save them both. And then the hermit was silent. The mountain spirit spoke. That is truly great love, for here blood does not speak. But I too have seen true friendship in the good old days, Achilles and Patroclus and many others. The hermit hung his head. You are right, he admitted. I shall come once more tonight, promised the mountain spirit, but that will be the last time. Think hard. And he vanished. It was late that holy Saturday night. In the villages, people were going to church for the midnight service. The old man knelt before his icon. It was too late to go to a village and hear the joyous tidings in the lighted church. Christ has risen. God would forgive him as he was missing the service for a good purpose. He closed his eyes and prayed. Soon, a dark shadow crept into the cave. A rough hand gripped the hermit's neck and looked up, and the hermit looked into a wild and distorted face. Hand it over, the rough voice commanded. Where's the money? Trembling, the old hermit raised his hands. What are you saying, brother? What money? I haven't got any. A fist struck him in the face. Don't try and fool me. All that money that people give you for saving them, where is it? Nothing. I have nothing, murmured the hermit in a faint voice. The robber threw him to the ground and kicked him. In a rage, the robber searched the poor dwelling but found nothing. Did I come to this cursed place just for this? He screamed and struck again and again, like a madman at the defenseless old hermit. Then the robber went storming out of the cave. At that very moment, the badly hurt old hermit heard the familiar sharp note of the wind and knew what would happen. The mountain shook. A violent gust stormed over the path. A cry rang through the air. The hermit struggled to his feet, seized the rope, and staggered out. In the distance, the church bells were starting to ring. With his last strength, the hermit hastened to the precipice and threw the rope to the robber, who was clinging to a bush. The holy man was just able to tie the other end of the rope round a point of rock before he fell to the ground, dying, and his soul left his body. The robber climbed up panting, looked at the dead man petrified for a moment, and then ran screaming away. The soul of the holy man was hovering over his body. The mountain spirit spoke. Can you see me? The soul answered, Yes, now I can see you as you really are. The spirit asked, Why did you do that? He murdered you. Love your enemies, my God has taught me, answered the saint. Silence fell. Then the mountain spirit said, That is a greater love than anything I have ever known. I shall keep my promise. Farewell. Peace be with you, said the saint. In the valley far below, the Easter bells were ringing joyfully.